the cup and the league all to be won. Everyone knows there's a job to be done, and with a team so fine, I'm proud they're mine. We'll be singing this song. For real bars of family athletic, and now we are on song. For real bars of family athletic, and we'll go marching on.
The Dunfermline Athletic Former Players Association podcast is sponsored by Starnut Apparel. Affordable and stylish clothing born on the terraces. Just head to www.starnutapparel.co.uk.
Welcome to a journey down memory lane that's sure to ignite your passion for the club we all adore. This is Walking Down the Holbeath Road, the podcast that reunites us with the legends who once graced the pitch at East End Park. I'm your host, Mikey Mokkiewicz, and I invite you to lace up your virtual boots as we step on to the hallowed turf of Dunfermline Athletics history. This podcast is your ultimate destination for all things Dunfermline Athletic former players, and we'll be sitting down with the heroes who made our dreams come true, scored unforgettable goals, and carved their names into the hearts of Par supporters. Each episode we deep dive into the stories that shaped their careers, from the early days to the highs and lows of football. From promotion battles to cup triumphs, these players have witnessed it all, and now they share these memories and all the insights with you. In this latest episode, we speak to Lee Bullen about his two spells at East End Park. First, part of the BP Youth Cup winning team in the 1980s, then returning in 2000 under Jimmy Calderwood. Lee had a playing career which took him to the likes of Hong Kong, Australia and Greece, then later in his career becoming the club captain and a cult hero at Sheffield Wednesday. So sit back, relax as we walk down the Holbeath Road with Lee Bullen.
Here's Lee Bullen, a chance for Dunfermline. It's a brilliant goal by Lee Bullen. From 1-0 down to 2-1 ahead. Jimmy Calderwood loved that, and so he should. It was a blistering finish from Bullen. It's a magnificent goal. Hart's looking for offside, but Bullen just too far forward. Great first touch, and hammered across the goalkeeper, Ronnie McKenzie. Absolutely no chance. This is the important bit. First touch, ball, lots of time, and what a magnificent finish from Lee Bullen. He's Mr. Utility Man. He pops up all over the pitch, does a lot of defensive work, but when he gets forward, he knows the route to goal. His fifth goal of the season puts a smile on the face of the manager.
Well, welcome to Walking Down the Holbeath Road. Lee Bullen, how are you doing, Lee?
Absolute pleasure to be here, mate. Great to see you. Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you.
Brilliant. And it was great to see you about a month or so ago at East End Park. You were back for the game against Partick Thistle.
Loved it. Good game, good atmosphere as always. Lads had a really good finish to the season, to be honest with you. Sticky patch during the season, but that's a championship for you. Every club will go through that sort of period, but it's great that everybody stuck together and the Pars finished the season, I would say, relatively strongly, and gives you a good platform to build on for next season.
Definitely, mate. Definitely. Right, we'll kick off the podcast with 5 general questions. So the first one, what were your favourite pair of football boots to wear?
I was always a Copa Mundials, and I started with World Cups. I was always Adidas, but I quite used the mix. Sometimes you could take them to somebody who would fix them and put studs in the Copas, that type of thing. So old school, black and white. Yeah, none of these pink or white things. I was just never technically good enough to use them, mate.
I was going to say, what's your thoughts on the football boots nowadays? Because obviously it's a lot different from the old leather with the studs.
Listen, the kids nowadays, the current players, they love them. They love how they're so light and everything like that. I do think they add to the odd injury. I really do. You stand on my toes with a pair of Copas, or if somebody was wearing Puma Kings or whatever back in the day, then it'd be fine. Nowadays, it's often a broken metatarsal or something like that. So I think they've got their positives, and I understand how the kids like them now because they do fit like gloves and they feel like you're wearing nothing, really. But again, from a medical, it'd be interesting to get physio's point of view on it, to be honest with you. I think most would agree with me. I've got to be honest with that.
Definitely, mate. Right, next question. If you could play for any club in the world right now, who would it be?
Right now? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. listen, growing up as a kid, Kenny Dalglish was my hero, so Liverpool was my team back in the day. But right now, you've got to lean towards being involved in a team like Man City or something like that. Really do. I've always been one that's liked to travel, so Madrid or Barcelona would definitely be a thing you'd love to play for. Listen, I was never going to be technically or quality-wise good enough to play for these teams, but if it was the dream choice, it'd probably be one of those three.
Brilliant. Good choices, mate. Who's your favourite band and favourite song?
So, listen, I like music. I can hum along to songs. I'm one of these that mouths the words and I've not got a clue what I'm singing about because I recognise songs. Did I have a favourite band? No. But when I lived in Australia for a year, a mate of mine bought random tickets and he had a spare ticket to a U2 concert in the Sydney Soccer Stadium. And their Zooropa tour and Zoomerang tour. And I went along to that. I wasn't really into U2, but after it, oh God, live music, it changes your perspective of certain bands. I've even been dragged along to a Madonna concert by an ex-girlfriend and things like that, and that changed my mind to her as well. So, no, but I would say U2 probably after that concert and the experience and seeing them live, they were absolutely brilliant. So I'd go down U2 route.
Nice one. I was going to say the best gig you've been to, but I'm guessing you're going to say that one.
I've covered that. Yeah, there's a few good bands down here in Sheffield. Def Leppard come for here, and then the Reverend and the Makers, massive Wednesday fans. So I've met these guys. They're good, really good. Not, well, obviously Def Leppard are a big band, but Reverend and the Makers are well known enough, but not obviously not world known.
Yeah. Good band. Seen them a few times up here, actually. Your dream football dinner party, if you could pick 3 teammates from over your time in football.
Right. Big Brew would have to be there, just so we could give him dog's abuse about his clobber that he wears. I think if Nipper listens to this, he'll know exactly where I'm coming from with that one. So Craig Brewster would definitely have to be there. Other players. I played in Hong Kong with a guy called Mike Duxbury, who's ex-Man United and England fullback. Absolute gentleman, scholar, really good stories, and taught me a lot in the way to hold yourself. This is a guy that played at the top level and ends up playing in Hong Kong with, I've always said Hong Kong was a place where players go who are have-beens or never have-beens. And I was a never have-been. He was a has-been type of thing. But his attitude towards it was absolutely spot on. And the last one would be not a player. No, definitely a coach that I've worked with, and it'd have to be Jimmy Nick. Some of his stories are, I don't know if you've seen him on the course.
I have, yeah, a few times.
Absolutely brilliant. So it'd have to be Jimmy Nick. Apologies to any of the lads out there, for the ex-Bars boys, if I've not chosen you. Don't worry about it, but you can understand my choices.
Jimmy would keep you entertained, that's for sure.
100%.
Final one. If there's one match during your career you could replay and play it again, what would it be? What one?
Par's career or just career?
Just general career, mate.
There's probably a couple, to be honest with you. Obviously, the playoff final, being captain for Sheffield Wednesday and lifting that cup was something that I'll live with me forever. The other one would be playing against the national team of England in Hong Kong as a select team that we had out there, and the opportunity I had to actually score against England would have been that. I'd love to replay that opportunity again. And then ultimately, it's probably the 2 Scottish Cup final opportunities I had where it was the greatest worst days of my life, to be honest with you. I think the Dunfermline one was disappointing because we had beat Celtic 2 games before and then I got dropped for the final. But I did get on, so I'm pleased with that. And the other one was, listen, I know it's a swear word, but getting to the final with Falkirk. Yogi dropped me out of the squad the day before that game, so I'd love to replay them again with the opportunity starting in those games as well.
Was that the Rangers Cup final? Falkirk Rangers? Is that one? 1-0.
Yeah, 1-0.
Yeah. You mentioned Hong Kong and you were a well-travelled player, but we'll go right back to the start. So you're born in March 71 in Edinburgh. So tell us a little bit about a young Lee Bullen and what you got up to in your young days in Edinburgh.
So born and brought up in Pennycook, just outside Edinburgh. Dad worked in the Edinburgh Crystal Factory. Mum was stay-at-home mum. Really traditional family. Never had a great deal of money. As I say, Dad was a factory worker, but I had the best childhood of my life. Some of the memories are brilliant. A lot of good friends around the place. 2 younger brothers. So we just basically fought our way through each other until we got to 18-year-old and actually grew up a little bit. Played football for local boys club, Eskmill Boys Club. 15 moved on Hutchison Vale. So they're a big name in the boys club stages and really enjoyed my time in both places. And then obviously signed S forms with Dunfermline. As a kid, I was involved in that squad with the BP Youth winning squad. Brilliant players, great characters in the group. got on in the set. I was on the bench in the semi-final against Rangers. Got on in the semi-final. Wasn't stripped in the final. So I'm putting that down to Jim Leishman. I'm blaming Big Jim all the time. So whenever I see him, he gets wound up for that. Even though he wasn't the coach, he was the first team gaffer at the time. Brilliant memories there with Dunfermline. Brilliant memories playing in boys' club football. And then obviously was released by Dunfermline, went off on my travels, went round the planet and signed with Dunfermline again about 10 years later. So it was a weird journey, but a brilliant journey. But born and brought up in Edinburgh and in Pennycook, just some great friends that I'll always have for life.
Brilliant, mate. And what's your early memories of watching football as a kid?
So my dad was a Hearts fan. So if I wasn't playing on a Saturday, I'd go along to, I suppose the earliest one for me, clear memory-wise, is probably the year that Hearts lost the league to Dundee. I think Dundee beat Hearts last game of the season or something like that, and I was involved. I went along to a few games there, and we actually, one of my school teachers at Pennycook High School was a history teacher, but he was on the board at Hearts, and he actually got us as ball boys at Tynecastle a couple of times, the school football team. And it had a couple of competitions at school and actually got us on the team bus one time. So I remember that's probably the clearest memory, is travelling on the Hearts team bus with Gary Mackay's and John Robertson's and Davy Bowman's and people at that time when they had a really, really good side. And so the first memory is a disappointing memory again of us unfortunately losing out on winning that league title.
Was it Albert Kidd or something scored the goal?
Don't even. I think he was nominated Hibernian's Player of the Year that year. I think that's how bad it was.
Aye. And Celtics, I think.
Aye.
What was it like later on in your career playing at Tynecastle then? Obviously being a Jambo growing up and then getting that opportunity to play at Tynecastle.
That's what people used to say to me. They say, I bet you really tried so hard when you were at Easter Road against Hibs because you were a young Hearts fan. But I thought it was the opposite. I actually probably tried harder at Hearts. A lot of my friends were Hearts fans. I had a few that were Hibs fans as well. A lot of my friends were Hearts fans. That was my boyhood team growing up. So I always wanted to try, and as a kid growing up, I never had the opportunity of trialling there, or a few of my schoolmates signed with MS Forms. Obviously, I went to Dunfermline and had a great time there. But I always tried harder at Tynecastle and had good and bad memories. I remember did we lose 6-0 with Dunfermline one time? 6 or 7-0 again?
7-1, I think.
7-1, that's right. There was a sore one we took. But
went 2-4-4 for like the last 30 minutes of the game.
I ain't got to do it. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. When Jimmy did that, we probably won more games than we lost. We probably won more games. I remember St Johnstone game. I think we were 2-0 down. We ended up coming back to win 3-2. It was brilliant. So we took a couple of sore ones at Tynecastle, but the best goal I ever scored with Dunfermline was at East End Park against Hearts. I remember that clearly, and I still... Listen, when you get old, you still got to look back on YouTube videos, don't you? To try and remind yourself that you could actually kick a ball down again. So probably tried harder at times. And honestly, I think it's probably one of the best stadiums to play in because they are right on top of it. Celtic Park, Ibrox, brilliant. Yeah, Easter Road, really good as well, obviously. But Castle, just because it's almost they're on top of you, I think it's such a brilliant atmosphere. Unique. Yeah.
Even more now with the new main stand, because obviously back in your time, it was the old main stand and it's even bigger now. Yeah,
it was almost only 3 sides that were right on you, but now with a bigger one.
Yes.
Great stadium to play football in.
Brilliant. And you mentioned earlier you joined Dunfermline on S form. So how did all that come about? What's your memories of originally joining Dunfermline as a youth player?
So I can't remember his surname, but there was an old scout called Sandy in Edinburgh. And we used to train at Peffermill down there initially. I think there was sort of like shadow squads around that Dunfermline were trying to build the academy up. So I remember going in there and there was 2 or 3 lads that I knew already. There was a lad called Ian Black who was my age at school and he was part of that youth cup game. He was a fantastic player, great lad. Had friends at Hearts, friends at Hibs. But the Dunfermline was, we used to train at Peffermill a couple of nights a week. I can't remember who the actual coach was at the time that took us over there. But then when we were trying to whittle down the squad and put together a proper squad, we'd end up training over at Dunfermline. It was the old Eagle Glen training ground. They had the building there, and listen, the pitches weren't brilliant, a little bit up and down and things like that. But it was a great atmosphere coming in with all the Dunfermline boys and boys around that area. John Strang and Andy Watson and all these sort of guys that were involved there. And at first there was sort of separation. Oh, they're the lads for Edinburgh, they're the lads for Fife type of thing. But eventually we came together, and that's the sign of a good team. You bring that sort of family together, and that's what led us to I think I played a massive part in winning that BP Youth Cup.
Yeah, what's your memories of that, the BP Youth Cup and that cup run, and then obviously winning the game?
It's probably mainly just the semi-final. I can't even remember who we played early on in those rounds, to be honest with you. You'd probably have to re-jog my memory. But I think the biggest memories were getting to play at East End Park, especially in the semi-final and then the final. I remember a good friend of mine played with Dundee up front was Paul Ritchie. He scored a lot of goals and went on to have a good career. He played in Hong Kong similar time to me as well. And Dundee had a really strong squad. But to beat Rangers in the semi-final was massive. And I remember the crowd being there. And probably wasn't that big a crowd, but it felt as if the stadium was full. And probably a few hundred people there. But it's the first time I'd actually played at East End Park. I've got on the pitch when there's a decent crowd there. The pressure was on, semi-final. We were underdogs, but we got over the line there. And then I think at that point we went from underdogs to favourites to win it. But Dundee were really, really strong. And no, it was a brilliant night and great memories. And as I say, as a youth player there, when Jim Leishman comes into the changing room before it and gives you a little pep talk as a first team manager, it's just like, wow, brilliant, great memories.
And then 1989, you were released, weren't you? So what's your memories of getting released? That must have been really frustrating and disappointing.
It was obviously disappointing, but I've got to be honest, I don't think it was a shock. The fact that you're on the bench in the semi-final, you're not stripped in the final, it's sort of writings on the wall, and I don't think you can ever say I was happy with it, but I sort of half knew it was coming. I felt it was coming, so I understood that. So I stepped back to boys club football at that time, and then did well enough to go junior football. And junior football at the time, now it's having a bit of a renaissance again, but with the restructuring in Scotland, it's changed big time. But back then, it was proper education for a kid. I was 17, 18-year-old, went to Pennycook Juniors, went to Whitburn Juniors, got to play in a Scottish Junior Cup final with Whitburn, lost to Auchinleck Talbot. But those experiences really, I grew as a person as well. You take a few dunts and you think your time is gone. When you leave as a youth player, you think, oh, maybe never going to get the chance. But junior football did well for me and gave me the opportunity to go to Meadowbank Thistle under Terry Christie, 18-year-old. Again, I've had a lot of bumps in my career, and lasted a year and a half there, got released, went to Stenhousemuir, lasted a year and a half, got released, and I thought that was me. That's my time gone in Scotland. Scotland's quite a closed book. Everybody knows everybody, and I think when you failed a couple of times, very difficult to get an opportunity back again. So that's when I made the decision to head off on the travels, go off to Australia initially.
How did that come about then, going to Australia in 93?
Good friend of mine, Billy McPhee, his name is. His dad was actually accounting for Wraith Rovers at the time. His dad played professional football at East Fife. Billy was on East Fife's books as a kid, similar age to me. So his dad played with a boy called Joe Watson, Scottish boy who had headed off, emigrated to Australia. Joe actually took Australian nationality and did actually play for Australia against Scotland in a World Cup playoff qualifier. I think Frank McAvenny scored the winner. But Joe, natural Scotsman, played for Australia against Scotland in a World Cup qualifier. Joe was coaching over in Australia in the Sydney Super League, one below the National League. And so Billy's dad contacted Joe and says, listen, my boy and his mate coming over to Australia, can they get a tryout with you type of thing? He says, yeah, bring them over. I don't know how good they are. If I can't get them a club or they're not going to be good enough for us, I'll be able to get them one lower down. Or if they do well for us, yeah, we'd love to sign them type of thing. So, and then a week before we're due to leave, Billy had to pull out. Financially, his dad was going to be giving him money. Something happened with his dad that he couldn't give his lad the money. So I ended up going on my own, which was, it was a bit nervous, to be honest with you, thinking you're travelling the other side of the world on your own. But I bought a round the world ticket and I thought to myself, I almost pulled out, but I had it in my head. I says, you know what, just give it 3 months. Ultimately, you've got a ticket home, so nothing much will change in 3 months. You just come back to get a job. Give it 3 months, see what happens. And I wasn't heading over to the unknown because my mum's brother and sister lived in Australia, so I was going to travel over to stay with my uncle initially. So I wasn't on my own, so to speak. But then after a couple of weeks of being there, training, you automatically have 15, 20 mates straight away in a changing room. Once you've earned their sort of respect in the changing room, on the training pitch. And there was a lad called Stuart Porter who took me under his wing, Scottish lad who had been at Hearts when he was younger, that type of thing. He took me under his wing, showed me the ropes and led me astray quite a few times. So that was really good.
What was it like adjusting to life in Australia? Was it pretty straightforward for you?
Relatively. Obviously, they speak the language, so that helps. And so no issues at all from that side of things. I don't know, people have got this sort of perceived idea of what Australians are as lazy bums that just sit on the beach all day and eat barbecues, drink beer and eat barbecue. But they're probably one of the most hardworking people. I found them that they were up at work at 5 in the morning, finished by 2 in the afternoon, down the beach by 3. And that was the image we were seeing them on the beach by 3, having a barbecue or drinking beer. But they were hardworking people, great, really multicultural, obviously. And it was such a wonderful place to live. Really brilliant, family-orientated place. Obviously, everything's outdoor due to the weather. And you're not far from the beach where I was. I lived in a place called Cronulla, just South Shore in Sydney. Sydney was a brilliant city to live in, and did really well in the State League and got the opportunity to train with a National League team. But I had the wrong visa at the time. You needed a specific sports visa. So we were having to fight through red tape in relation to that. So I was able to sign for a team called Wollongong Wolves. And that seemed to drag. And in the meantime, I was approached by an Australian agent about going to Hong Kong to play for a team in Hong Kong, because with a British passport at that point, still British owned, didn't need a work visa. As I say, Wollongong were dragging the heels. But as soon as they heard that I had the opportunity to go to Hong Kong, bizarrely, red tape disappeared and they were able to offer me a contract. So I don't know what went on there, but I'd committed to going to Hong Kong instead. And it was probably the best thing I did, mate. Probably really is the best thing I did.
Brilliant. And you mentioned it earlier, big highlight in your career when you were in Hong Kong, playing against England as part of the Euro 96 build-up. Yeah. So what's your memories of that? And there was one famous event with the dentist chair.
Right.
Apparently you were there.
Yeah, the dentist chair. Okay, we've played the game. A brilliant game. For me, great experience. Had a great opportunity, 1v1 against goalkeeper. He just appeared from nowhere. And it was unfortunately that goes by. The dentist chair was brilliant. So there was a nightclub. It was almost like a TGI Friday type scenario, you know. Meals during the day, and then by I think it's about 9-10 o'clock in Hong Kong, there's food stops serving. It turns into a sort of nightclub and everything. They had this infamous dentist chair that sat in the corner where you order a shot at the bar. It was basically lime and vodka. You get in the dentist chair, you lie back, head back, open your mouth, and there's a guy stands behind as if he's a dentist, but he just pours it in until. So yeah, the English boys come in. Gaza was in the dentist chair, enjoyed himself. I think it was his birthday the day before or day after. So quite a lot of the lads really enjoyed themselves. Probably got a wee bit carried away, as you've seen from the photographs, but it wasn't as bad as they were making out. Genuinely wasn't as bad as the people were making out. So it was a good night. They did get carried away. Gaza decided to go around and start ripping shirts off his teammates. You've seen the pictures. But it was actually it looks bad. It's the national team, get it. But it was actually quite good-natured. It wasn't overly bad. There was one or two that were maybe a bit OTT, but other than that, nah. I think they were hard done by in the press, and they certainly found the best way to stick two fingers up at the press after it with the performances they put on. Unfortunately, I was at Wembley for the Scotland game as well, where Gaza celebrated this cheer thing. So yeah, so 2 weeks earlier I'd played against them. 2 weeks later I'm at Wembley watching them.
Amazing. Who did you play against that England team in Hong Kong? Who was playing?
So David Seaman, Tony Adams and Sol Campbell, Stuart Pearce, Gary Neville, I think. Midfield was Paul Ince, David Platt, Steve McManaman, Alan Shearer, Les Ferdinand. I can't remember who was on the left side, but it wasn't Bex. Bex wasn't there at the time.
Good boy, Darren Anderton, maybe? Darren Anderton.
Yeah. And they brought a few subs on and off and things like that. So, yeah, it was a strong team. It was good. Gaza injured, took a knock in a game 5 days before in China, so didn't get involved in that one. So wasn't involved, unfortunately. Yeah.
Great experience, some team.
Absolutely brilliant, mate. Absolutely brilliant. I'm just checking this. It seems to be holding up at the moment, but I'm hoping it doesn't cut out.
Right, no worries. We'll just carry on now. So after Hong Kong, you have a spell in China and then Greece, and then you get the opportunity to come back to Scotland. How did it come about, rejoining Dunfermline?
What happened, it was an England game. Deadly Doug Ellis, the chairman of Southampton at the time, I'd played really well, and he approached me after the game. He says, how'd you like to come back to play in England? And I'm like, Jesus, Aston Villa, brilliant. And then he throws it in. A good friend of mine's chairman of Walsall. And I was like, oh. But then I thought, you know what, still brilliant. I can sort you out, go in to train, I can put your name forward. I think you do a great job for them type of thing. We've got good relationships as clubs and everything like that. So what happened? Well, nothing came of that initially. So bizarrely, the guy that owned his hometown club in Greece, small town like Kalamata, probably similar size to Dunfermline, to be honest with you. One of these teams that was sort of mid to lower at the top table all the time, sort of battling away. Stadium at 10,000 capacity. So he was a Greek man, owned his local football team. His business was diamond and emerald mines in Brazil, but his head office was in Hong Kong because it's a relatively cheap tax place, 15% tax. So he liked to go to the local football matches. He went to the England game, saw me, did really well. There was a Brazilian centre-back that played and a Portuguese boy that also played. And so 3 of us got offered contracts to go to Greece. And I just thought my time was done in Hong Kong. I'd got married over there to an English girl, just felt it was closer to home. So we thought, yeah, let's take the chance, let's go. So, and it was me, I'd gone sort of slowly but surely down the ladder in Scotland, went to the other side of the world, and this was me hopefully trying to rebuild it, go back up the ladder a little bit. And Greece was an opportunity to play in the top league in Greece against teams like Olympiakos and Panathinaikos and AEK Athens, PAOK, people like that. Was an experience I never thought I would ever get an opportunity to do, and it was just absolutely mind-blowing. It was an opportunity to go to another country, learn a new language. And so I went there, as I say, with my wife at the time, and we paid for our own tutor to learn Greek and try and integrate. That was the one thing that let the Portuguese and the Brazilian boy down. They stuck together really and never really integrated with the Greek boys, and I think that was detrimental to their progress in Greece. Me and the missus at the time really tried to get out with the Greek lads, sit amongst them when they're having cocktails. We never understood a word initially, but the fact you're making an effort and they would chip in with bits of English and that, I think they appreciated that. I think one piece of advice, if anybody's going abroad, get involved in the culture, try and learn the language, because even if you go into a shop to order something, you make a verbal mistake by accident, the people really appreciate that you're trying, making the effort. And so that really helped us. So we had 2 really good years in Greece out there because of that. And then again, that run its course, got the opportunity to come back. And at that time, had the opportunity to go to Walsall on trial. So I went down to Walsall for a week. It was halfway through the season. It was just before Christmas. Went to Walsall for a week. Did quite well. They said, tell you what, go back up the road, because I think it was the Millennium. Spend a couple of weeks with your family, come back down in January, and we'll see where we go from there. But when I went back up for Christmas and New Year, my agent, Blair, used to be on the board, Blair Morgan, he arranged me for just to go in and train with Dunfermline. Jimmy Calderwood had just taken over. He didn't know me, so he had no preconceived ideas of me failing in Scotland. And I went in and trained for a week, about 10 days over the Christmas period. Played 2 games against Dundee United and Rangers. Scored in both games. And Jimmy offered me a contract because at that time, I think Owen Coyle had just been sent off against Wraith Rovers and Big Anton was injured, or both of them were suspended. So they needed a striker of some sort. And it was before Stevie Crawford and Big Brew were there. So I got the opportunity to sign.
Brilliant. And that season, we finished second to St Mirren, but you played 11 games and scored 7 goals.
Right.
I remember one cracking goal against Livingston at East End Park. Do you remember that one?
Yes, that was left foot as well.
It's a cracker.
So that was up there with the Hearts one, but not quite as good.
What was the 2 Jimmys like when you first went in? So obviously Jimmy had just arrived from Holland at that point. He was quite new to the club, wasn't he?
That was a bonus for me because, as I say, he had no preconceived ideas. Again, what I'd done in Scotland before, he was very open-minded. And don't get me wrong, when I was going in initially, I wasn't going in to sign anything. There was nothing on offer. Jimmy knew that. He was just doing a favour for Blair, to be honest with you. But as I say, I did okay, and then he was great. I think I joined in with the lads pretty quickly. I think scoring my debut in the snow against Morton was obviously very, very helpful. 1 for the fan base and 2 for the lads. So, but having people like Nipper Thompson in there, Big Andy Todd, Stuart Petrie, these type of guys who were solid gentlemen, people, they were really helpful for me bedding in. And then obviously the following season we were able to enhance the squad with your Fergies and Barry Nicholsons and Stevie Crawfords and Gary Masons and all these guys to come in and help us out. I had a little bit of Dutch flair in there with your Duisburgs and people like that. We built a really solid Premier League squad. Yeah,
well, I was going to ask that. The following season, we're back to Premier League or the SPL, and the Skellers come in, the Rossies come in, the Dutch boys come in. What was that like? The squad totally changing in the space of like a season.
I think the nucleus was I think the spine of the squad, and again, don't mean the team, the spine of the squad in that changing room with your Nippers, with your Toddies, with your these sort of lads, and it was important that there was a nucleus of Scottish lads there, because you get too many going the other way and then cliques start to build, but we never allowed any cliques to build. Obviously, Andreas was on his own, the only Lithuanian. Rossi was the only Moroccan that came in. He was quite aloof, kept himself to himself, strange character, brilliant player when he fancied it. But the Dutch lads could have just stuck to themselves, but they integrated straight into the Scottish culture as well. Really good lads. But the important thing I think the gaffer put together there, the Jimmy's put together, was that solid base of Scottish players. And young and old, the experience of your Fergies and your Brewsters and your young ones, Crawfords and Masons and Nicholsons, really, really good.
And one thing I've heard from various players from this era is the two Jimmies built a really good culture, a real togetherness, didn't they, with the squad? Yeah,
they really, really did. They encouraged us to spend time together when they did give us a night out or a day off or anything. He encouraged us to go out together, and there was a real buy-in for the players. They really did. It wasn't quite the Rangers. We went together, we drink together type of thing, but it was along those lines. Just really enjoying ourselves together. End of every season. John Yorkston was the chairman at the time. With the board and the staff and the players would have an end of season trip to Spain and let off steam, and that's where you really got to see people's nature away from football and real sort of characters. Some of them that were quiet around the change room suddenly exploded when they stepped off that plane in Mallorca. So good fun, good memories. Don't even ask me for any of the stories.
I'm not. We won't go there. How did you find the jump from First Division football to playing SPL football?
Surprisingly okay. I think the solid additions to the squad. There's probably a little bit of trepidation initially because you're questioning yourself, am I good enough? But I think one, the team spirit, and two, the recruitment additions, I think it put everybody at ease. And the fact we went from promotion to survival to top six to European qualification in those years, I think that's how a proper football club should work. And that's where maybe the club's at the moment, potentially. So it's, as I say, they've had a really good promotion. They've won that league a year ago. They've had a solid introduction back into the Championship. There's great foundations in the club at the moment to go on and build on that and hopefully challenge towards the playoffs next season, because they weren't far away from it this season.
Definitely, mate. Fingers crossed. During that time, we mentioned the squad keeps improving year upon year. But one thing I wanted to ask you was the plastic pitch. What was your thoughts on that?
Oh, don't get me wrong, it was worth a goal to us. It really was. But for players to play it was horrendous. It was a bad plastic pitch. It wasn't like nowadays. There's some really decent ones out there. But at that time, we were definitely a test case. And the fact it was patched together like a jigsaw, it just never really helped. The glue was solid in certain bits, and if you skidded in or slid in the wrong place, it would really it could cut your leg open. So it wasn't great for us. But the fact that we trained in it every day, it helped. If you played in that once, and so many teams would come playing it once, and you'd have back issues and everything like that. So it did give us an advantage. I'm going to be honest with you up front there. But I would much rather have a decent grass pitch, and I'm glad they've gone back to it.
I was going to say that. What's your thoughts on clubs using plastic pitches, especially in top flight football up here?
I think top flight, I don't think it should be allowed. I can fully understand it because the financial issues in Scotland compared to down here in England are massive. The differences, non-league clubs are paying like 3, 4, 5, 10 times what I was able to pay my players at Ayr United. So I get it. It's not too dissimilar at Dunfermline. So I can fully understand why your Hamiltons and your Wraith Rovers and your Cove Rangers and that go down that route, because one, you've got an automatic training ground. Two, you can rent it out during the week. There's extra finance coming in. The upkeep is not as difficult. So I fully I do think that if you have a plastic pitch, I think there should be something in it that has to be upgraded every 5 years as opposed to 10 years or something like that. I don't know. But I can see the merits in it. And let's be right, nowadays, I don't think there'll be a young kid nowadays growing up when they get to 18 that's not used to playing on AstroTurf as opposed to grass. Some of the grass pitches in public parks are a disgrace at the moment. They used to be looked after when I was a kid, or relatively looked at now. The local council have got the finance to do it for whatever reason.
I see it even now, Lee, like kids 7, 8 year old, when they go play on grass, they're thinking, what is this? Exactly. Like, they're so used to playing on nice artificial pitches. Like, grass is alien to them now.
I agree, 100%. And see, at Ayr United, because we used to train in it every day, we actually felt some of our best performances were probably away from home on the AstroTurf pitches because we're training it every day as opposed to grass. Ideally, you'd like to have a grass pitch and an AstroTurf training pitch. So if you're building up to Wraith Rovers one week, you're training on the AstroTurf. If you're building up to Dunfermline next week, you're training on the grass. But again, we've not got the facilities, not got the finance to do that. That's the thing. So I can understand why clubs do it. Give me a good grass pitch over a good AstroTurf pitch every day of the week. But give me a good AstroTurf pitch over a bad grass pitch every day of the week as well.
Yeah, 100%. Season 2304, we finished fourth in the SPL. But one thing I wanted to touch on was off the pitch, there was unravelling going on with the administration talks, and you guys had to take cuts. What was that like? Obviously, with mortgages to pay, and
that was hard, and it was done on a pro rata basis. So depending on what scale where you were earning, then the top earners had to take, I think, 30% cut, middle earners 20%, and lower earners 10% cut. So we all had our chip in, but it was tough times, and I think that's where the actual change room culture, the togetherness came through, and we were able to finish it off and finish so high up there because there was a real uncertainty about it. There was all different rumours flying about in relation to we're going to be okay. Oh no, the club's going to go under. Oh, they're going to go out of business. Everything like that. Well, we're going to have a job the following season. There's going to be mass cuts. Players going to get sacked. Our staff going to get sacked. And it was a worry. And when you've got a young family and you've got kids and you've got a missus or girlfriend at home and things like that, it's not easy. Suddenly, listen, everybody lives to the means that they're given, and suddenly when you're going home with 10% less in your wage packet or 20% less in your wage packet, you're having to cut your bit. We were never massive earners at the time. Probably a decent working wage, don't get me wrong, we'll be at the higher end of the scale, but still, when you're budgeting to have X amount in your account every month and then you're short, it's tough sometimes. It's tough to take. To be fair to the club, they eventually did get it sorted out, which was great, and most boys were probably recompensed further down the line for the wage that they had to defer and things like that. So that's massive. I've heard a lot of clubs having to do these sort of cuts, and these players were never recovered the money that they lost. But listen, it's the unfortunate state of Scottish football sometimes that it gets to that stage. I mean, we had a brilliant time with Sky Sports, and then Setanta came along, or it was ITV Digital or something like that. So they always think, an extra £5 there will be brilliant. If they'd stuck with Sky Sports, they'd probably be in a much better place. But I don't want to poo-poo the businessmen at the SFA. I just think there was some mistakes made along the way.
Yeah, all hindsight. Eh? That season, though, we get to the Scottish Cup final. What's your memories of the cup run, and then obviously the disappointment not getting to play or start the game, certainly in the final?
So I touched on earlier in relation to, we went to Celtic Park in the league 2 games before the end of the season, and we beat them there. I think Gary Dempsey scored the goal, lobbed it over the goalie. But we won. Yeah. I played left wing back, I think, on that day. But we played really, really well. And then we had one last league game against Hearts at Tynecastle. Then we had the Scottish Cup final. So we did brilliant. We beat Celtic. We were flying. We did really great. It was a dead rubber, the Hearts game. We went out to Hearts and we were really poor. Really poor. Didn't have a great game at all. And probably... it's crap to say it, you're half picturing Hampden rather than the last game because we had just beat the champions or Glasgow Celtic there, and we were due to play them in the cup. So, yeah, the performance at Tynecastle wasn't very good. I think we lost 2-0 or 3-1 or something like that, but we were miles off it. Anyway, the week's build up to it, Jimmy pulls me in on a Thursday, told me I wasn't going to be starting, and I was gutted. I just felt like I was the only one. I was being punished for the Hearts performance. I didn't play well against Hearts, but I don't think anybody played well against Hearts. But I seemed to be the only one that was missing out from the team that beat Celtic at the time. I think he decided to go with young Aaron, and that really disappointed me. But what I will say, it did give me 48 hours to get over the disappointment and then get my head back in the game. It would have been even worse. The one thing I learned, and now I've done the management side of it and hopefully get back another opportunity, I would never name a team just like an hour before a game or a squad. I'd always let lads get over their disappointment. I think lads will know basically what the 11 is on the Friday so they can get over any disappointment they've had and then get back involved and be prepared to come off the bench and make an impact. And so from that point of view, to get that 48 hours recovery period before actually going to Hampden was probably good for me.
What's your memories of the game? Obviously, we go 1-0 up in the first half.
We were playing well. Celtic were poor. Larson had never had a touch of the ball, really. That's typical of him. and we're 1-0 up, as you say. We could have had a penalty in the game, I think. And what was it, about half an hour to go or something like that? I can't remember. Jimmy give me the shout. Really get ready, get down. So I'm standing on the sidelines, 1-0 up, and thinking, right, go on. Let's hold the fort. 30 minutes to go, or whatever it is, 20 minutes to go, and let's see the game out. Let's just defend our lives. But when I'm standing at the sidelines, Henrik goes through and scores, doesn't it? So the whole atmosphere in the stadium changes. Celtic get a massive lift. So I'm now, instead of stepping on with that Dunfermline fans singing, the Celtic end are really quiet at the time. I'm now going on to this like 3/4 full green and white stadium. It has just gone mental, and suddenly confidence is up in Larsson, Sutton, Hearts, and Baldy's suddenly grown another foot high. Valgaeren, you know, all these guys, they're suddenly alive. So I go on, and then not long after I've gone, they go 2-1 up. As I say, I think we could have had a penalty claim in their box. And then late on, obviously, I think it was Stilian Petrov that might have scored their third goal.
Yeah.
But obviously, that ended up Larsson's last game for Celtic. It was obviously my last game for the club at Dunfermline.
Did you know that before the game, that you were going to believe in the club?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I think it had been agreed. It was something that Dunfermline had sort of intimated that there wasn't going to be anything there the following week. But bizarrely, end of season in Mallorca, I'd verbally agreed to go to Sheffield Wednesday. But then when we're sitting in a pub in Mallorca, John Yorkston and Jimmy pulled me and says, listen, we've changed our mind, we'd like you to stay. I loved Dunfermline, I thought it was brilliant, but I like to think I'm a man of my word. I would hate somebody to do that to me. I just give them verbal, yes, I'm coming type of thing. And then turn around and say, no, I'm not coming. So I was committed at that point to having the opportunity to go down to Sheffield Wednesday. And it was a great move. It was a big loss to leave Dunfermline, because Dunfermline and Sheffield Wednesday are probably the two biggest parts of my playing career, clubs-wise. I played the biggest parts of my career from that side of things. And it was a wrench to leave, because the lads were brilliant. The fan base were always magnificent to me. And it's always good going back. But the opportunity to go to Sheffield Wednesday, and listen, hindsight's a great thing as well, but to go on and end up that first season lifting the trophy as captain of Sheffield Wednesday, I'd failed at Meadowbank, I'd failed at Stennismuir, I'd failed at Dunfermline as a schoolboy, and I've gone to Australia. Now this wee guy for Pennycook's lifting the trophy for what was in my day a Premier League football club. Now I know it's only promotion to the third division in England, but wow, it was surreal. Really was surreal.
It's an institution, that club, eh? Before we touch on that, just rounding off your time at Dunfermline, so you made 151 appearances and scored 24 goals. Is there any games or goals that stand out? Obviously, you touched on the Hearts goal.
The Livingston one in the Hearts goal. That was amazing. I think our victories over Rangers and Celtic, whenever they came along, are always massive. I remember there's one that Close makes a. Is it Close? I think Close makes a horrendous error at Eastern Park, one that's almost, I think it just bounces back to him and makes a bad mistake, and it dribbles through his hands into goals. So I think they're the best memories for me. We seem to have the hex over Hibs whenever they played. I think Brewster and Crawford, considering they're both ex-Hibs players, seem to be anointed whenever they went to Easter Road and scored against them. We had brilliant games against them. They had great size to play against people like Frank Sozzi at Hibs. You got Caniggia and people like that at Kitsbaya and people like that at Dundee. At Rangers, you got the De Boer brothers and Laudrups and people like that, and obviously Celtic. I think the biggest memories for me is that the standard of player that was playing in Scotland, that they were world-class players at that time, not just like Scottish Premier League players or English, but they were world-class, international class players. And again, I go back to, and I'm not putting myself down on it, but just a wee guy for Pennycook that's playing in this against all these guys. And you actually walk through the street in Glasgow and the Boer brothers are walking towards you and acknowledging you and saying, how you doing, Lee? And that they know you, and you're thinking that it's just weird. It was just such a bizarre sort of period career. It makes you think, you know what? I wasn't too bad, actually. I did all right. Out of it, considering. So,
did you ever get starstruck by any of these guys when you played against them?
Probably initially, but after the first, no, not really. Who was the Dutch fullback that played at Rangers? Older boy. Oh, God, he was the one that had most respect.
Arthur Newman.
So his last game for Rangers, I actually got his shirt. We swapped shirts, and for whatever reason, he seemed to whenever we played him, he'd always come over for a chat and everything. I don't know. He's a good friend of Michelle Duisberg, and I don't know if maybe that was linked there, but he seemed to sort of almost friend me up a little bit, and I just found that bizarre. He was such a gentleman on the pitch, such a good player, such a gentleman on the pitch, and as I say, I've still got his Rangers top for his last game. So that was just little memories like that.
Who was your toughest opponent playing against?
Henrik all day long. Like you touched on that Celtic one. He did nothing for 80 minutes and then he just pop up and score a hat-trick. You'd just be like, what are you doing? And so many people poo-pooed at that Farmers League in Scotland. Anybody could score in that league. But he did it. He came down to Manchester United and did it in the Premier League. He went to Barcelona, did it. And he did it in international. Absolutely. Just a wonderful, wonderful player. But just a good human as well. I think he was just all right at the park. He wasn't one of these people that you just wanted to smash into, or anything like that. He was just like quite respectful on the pitch, but an enigma, special football player.
Aye, no half. You played with obviously many players at Dunfermline. Who were you close to, and who would you say was the best player?
Brew was the one I was probably closest to. He was my travel partner for Edinburgh. We used to travel over together. But when you say closeness, the whole group was close. We talked on the culture and the friendship and the solidity within the changing room at that time. So I still stay in touch with Nipper all the time. Fergie's over in Australia, but we've still got a WhatsApp group with all the lads in it. Whenever birthdays come up, or whenever Jack De Geer decides to put some random garbage on a WhatsApp group, then it still wakes the lads up. John Potter, brilliant. As I say, Stuart Petrie's still doing brilliant stuff up there in Montrose. Stevie, Jason Dare. Yeah, come on. The whole group was absolutely. Barry Nick's been down in England for a while now, but still stay in touch. I think we'll be friends forever, that group of lads. Really will. But probably Brew's the closest one because he was my travel partner.
Yeah.
He actually had worse gear than me, so he took pressure off me whenever we walked into the changing rooms.
Brilliant. Who would you say was the most underrated player?
Jason Dare, definitely. He had such a wonderful left peg. Nipper was the driving force in the changing room. He drove it really good. We had quality and experience in Fergie. We had the exuberance of youth, and as I say, Mace and Barry Nicholson. We had the, I would say, international quality of Brewster and Crawford up front, and then you've got your Petries and everybody like that. Add in the foreign guys, but Jason Dare was a lad that you could play him anywhere in the park and he'd do a job. And he's one of these guys that is probably more important when he's not there, because that's when you notice him. When he's playing, you don't really notice. But when he's not there, you think, I wish we had Dan. I wish we had Jason playing today. So he was probably the most underrated one, yeah, definitely. Brilliant. I think he was a wonderful squad player and great lad in and around the place. And yeah, definitely missed when he was either injured or not starting games.
Brilliant. Good choice, mate. And obviously you worked under the two Jimmies during your whole time there. Is there any stories you can tell us or any team talks that stand out?
No, not really. Not really. Again, it's just going back to Jimmy. We just produce stories out of nowhere in relation to his Ireland days or Man City days or Man United days or Rangers days. And nothing really that stands out. They were just such a really good cop, bad cop type scenario. And I think they showed their real human side when we went through that period, the wage cuts and the financials issues at the club. They really came out and came away for their Stadler and Waldorf mentality. You know, the two Muppets up in the stand where they were like that. That's how they used to work. They really became sort of more human at that point. Now, obviously, they were having to take wage cuts as well, but I think they held the group together. And there's no real stories that I can really give you. That they were the laces and the trainers that they put together. They were the things that knitted us and just kept us together and led us and put an arm around us when we needed it, or gave us a boot up the backside when we needed it, that type of thing. So, but there was not. I don't think there's any real stories that I can tell you that there would be anything new for you. To be fair.
Cool. Is there anything you learned from the guys that you've taken into your approach in coaching?
Yeah, so as I touched on before, the biggest thing I've taken for any coach I've worked with, not just those two guys, is people say, what have you taken? What would you do that other coaches have done? It's probably the opposite. It's probably things I've learned from not just those two, other coaches, things I wouldn't do. And I touched on the other one earlier. Some coaches would name the team an hour before the game. I never liked that, because the disappointment you get when your name's not on the starting 11 is a nightmare, and you're having to try and get through that within half an hour of a game. So that's a big thing. There's certain coaching drills and things like that I know players hated, so I wouldn't do it. Don't get me wrong, you still have to do running in training, you still have to do fitness stuff and everything like that. I get that, but I don't know, sometimes everybody needs to do shadow play at times. You have to do passages of play. You have to do things like that. But when you're dragging it on for an hour and a half, when there's no opposition in it, you've got to mix it up. So those different bits and pieces like that I just learned from coaches what I wouldn't do, rather than, you still take things from coaches, of course, but it was more about what I wouldn't do and relate to.
Just rounding off, Dunfermline, last one for that. Your favourite memory from your time at East End Park? Is there anything you can pick out?
There's probably two for me. It's bizarrely, it was promotion behind St Mirren. I thought that was a brilliant season. As I say, I had failed so many times, and to come back and be part of a promotion winning team, unfortunately not as champions, but fair play to St Mirren that season. It was a great ding dong between us, and obviously we got a slight help that Brockville was not compliant for Premier League status there, so we avoided a playoff against Falkirk. The other one was, weirdly, when I left the club, because I was really proud of what I'd been part of in that 4 years, having taken it to the promotion, taken it to the survival, taken it to the top six, and left the club with albeit a defeat, a cup final appearance and qualification for Europe. I felt gutted about leaving, but I felt I'd left the club in a good place, and I felt I'd contributed to that. So that's probably the two things that I feel really proud of in my time at Dunfermline. And it wasn't as if I was leaving the club on the back of a relegation or something. That really peed me off. I went through a period of that at Sheffield Wednesday where I was sort of coming to the end of my time at Wednesday. The club were struggling at the bottom of the league. It was halfway through the season. I had the opportunity to go and play more games at Port Vale on loan, but I'd been part of the club that first year of getting promotion up. I didn't want to leave the club on a relegation, so that was it. That's why I was sort of, weird as it sounds, leaving the club. It was a proud time for me because I'd known I'd played a big part with a good group of people, with a brilliant fan base, and the club was in a good place. So would love to have played in Europe. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to dismiss that. Would love to have played in Europe, but it was probably at that point a good time to leave. And as I say, I had so many good memories for that period, that 4 years.
Brilliant, mate.
We are Flow Digital Pharmacy, and we are proud to sponsor the Walking Down the Holbeath Road podcast. Our easy-to-use app is a convenient way to access your NHS prescription medication, and our team of trained pharmacists are helping thousands of people to access the support and medication they need. If you're registered with a GP who's based in England, you can use the Flow app to securely and conveniently send them NHS medication requests and arrange delivery to a location of your choice at a time that suits you. This means you can avoid the hassle of contacting your GP and making unnecessary round trips to eventually collect your prescription. Find out more at We Are Flow, spelled PHLO. That's weareflow.com.
And then, like we said earlier, 2004, you join an institution at English football in Sheffield Wednesday. So what was it like when you initially went down there? Did you realise how big that club was? Or
I don't think I did. I don't think I did until the actual first game of the season. I went down, obviously, and I was shown around the stadium. So you realise this is a hell of a stadium. This, as you say, you're trying to picture the history in it and all the. Obviously, there's the sadness of the Liverpool fans in the semi-final. So there's that sadness there, and there's that memorial outside the stadium all the time. But you go in there and you still picture the history. This is a FA Cup semi-final stadium here in Villa Park, are the ones that are used before they go to Wembley. Everything like that you've seen in the past. And you've got, for me, I still remember your Chris Waddles and your Mark Brights and your David Hursts and Alton Palmers and Des Walkers and people like that played there. And the club were like the third best team in England at one point, regularly getting to FA Cup semi-finals, things like that. So that sort of took you back a little bit. But it wasn't until the first game of the season pre-season we gone in, and they had just avoided relegation to League Two the season before. So there was a mass clear out by the gaffer, and there was 12 new faces in the so it was new for a lot of lads, and it was all about building a culture there along the lines of what I felt we had at Dunfermline, and we were basically a bunch of waifs and strays thrown together and trying to build a new culture and a new belief within the club to rebuild it, send it back in the right way again. Chris Marsden, ex-Wolves and Southampton, have been brought in as a skipper, 36-year-old. Myself, there was John Paul McGovern and Stevie McLean from Scotland as well. Lee Peacock was Scottish, but had basically lived in Brighton at Bristol all his days. really good group of lads that had been thrown together. But with the fact that there was sort of 12 new faces, 10 left and 12 come in, the beginning of the season was very up and down. But the biggest memory for me going in there was we actually went pre-season trip to Ibiza and played in a pre-season. Nice. And exactly, I mean, as far as end of season trip goes, yeah, that would be great. But this was a pre-season trip, it was mental. Chris Turner was the manager, Colin West was his assistant, and Peter Eustace was the scout that brought me into Wednesday. So we went to Ibiza. So there was us, Watford, Preston, and basically a team of Spanish waiters in this 4-team tournament. We played Preston in the first game. So we were in League One. Watford and Preston are championship teams. We beat Preston first game 3-1, played really, really well. Drew with Watford in the final and lost on penalties, but played really, really well. So it was a really successful trip. We were unbeaten in pre-season, had a brilliant pre-season. So the togetherness was there right from the start. And I think the trip to Ibiza really got the lads together. So we have Colchester at home. Fan base have gone from apathy the season before to actual real excitement and seeing the pre-season games, everything like that. We played Colchester at home. And that's where I knew it was a big, there was 28,500, 26,000 there. And I'm thinking, wow, this is just ridiculous. This is third tier of English football. Almost got relegated last year and there's 25,000 people here. We got thumped 3-0, didn't we? Oh my God. We got battered by Colchester and I'm thinking, oh my God. And then you start to sense how big the club is at that point. And we're thinking, oh, this could be tough here. But luckily enough, we went to Blackpool next game and we won 2-1. I actually scored. I played left back and I scored. So, but for that first 9 games of the season, we would win a game, lose a game, win a game, lose 2 games, win a game. It was just up and down with all the changes and trying to get a rhythm together. And Chris Turner lost his job in that period, which allowed Paul Sturrock to come in. So we got promoted at the end of that season, but Sturrock took all the plaudits. But I think Chris Turner still deserves a pat on the back in relation to making some tough decisions and bringing that group of players into the squad. He just wasn't given the time to really bed it in properly.
Yeah, the joys of management, eh? What was the standard like? What was the difference between playing up in Scotland SPL to League One?
I think at that time, we talked on it earlier in relation to the quality of player that was playing in the Scottish Premier League at that time. That was the difference. There was world-class players playing in Scotland at that time and the quality was up there. And Celtic and Rangers would have been on a... Well, you saw the battles of Britain where Rangers against Leeds and everything like that back in the day. Scottish teams were on a par with English Premier League teams at that time, could match them, could give them a good game, everything like that. Now, obviously, that's changed drastically nowadays due to finance. Now, for me, League One at that time was, I don't know, they could think one of the pre-season games, Sheffield Wednesday came up when I was at Dunfermline. We played Sheffield Wednesday and I think we beat them when Sheffield Wednesday were down in, I think, League One at the time. I think we beat them 3-1 or 2-1 or something like that. So there wasn't a massive difference, even for clubs of that size, even a couple of leagues down, against, what would you say was maybe the lower Premier League teams. But Rangers and Celtic against Sheffield Wednesday, they wiped the floor with them at that time. I just felt the Scottish game was in a much healthier place at that time in relation to the big difference for me is, and this is why Scottish players like to come down to England, is the unfamiliarity of just playing each other twice. Instead of playing each other 4 times, possibly drawing each other in cups. So and maybe a replay in it, but sometimes you're playing teams 6-7 times a season in Scotland. And that's, for me, that's the toughest thing. And the experience at Ayr, and obviously you boys in the chat, to play each other 4 times in a 10-team league, there's just...
It's stale, isn't it?
Stale sometimes for supporters as well. Yeah. I think if you've got a top league of 18, second league of 18, and then a North and a South league in Scotland feeding in, the North and the South league, I think, it just saves clubs like your Annans travelling to Peterhead. That's the biggest expense. They've got the travel expenses. They put a bus together and maybe a meal or something. If the Annan are just playing against teams, maybe up to Glasgow or even as far as Fife or something like that, to East Fife or as far as that, then it's not so bad, but not going up to Elgin and Peterhead. It's the same way Elgin having to travel down to Annan or Stranraer or something. It's just madness, utter madness financially. But when they filter into maybe a championship, when they've got games against Ayr United's, maybe Dunfermline's or Morton's and things like that, then fine. And even in the Premier League, there's clubs there. You look at it, Wraith will give Ross County a right good game. Last year, Partick so unlucky against Ross County. We at Ayr beat St Johnstone in I know it's the pre-season sort of League Cup group stages. I get that, but they're there. Dunfermline could quite easily hold their own against a Motherwell on their day, it's been proven in the past. So And plus, again, I'm going on my soapbox here with Scottish football, and I apologise because I'm going off tack. I think when you're not losing 4 times to Celtic and Rangers, that's 24 points basically you're down season. Let's be right, the odd occasion you get the odd win against them, 24 points of difference. That's why the two of them are running away with it. If you're only losing twice to them potentially, and the odd time a Hearts or a Hibs or something puts a good Dunfermline in the past, they put a good run again, it just narrows it down. I don't know. That's my own point.
I totally agree. I'm sure the listeners will agree as well, Lee, to be honest.
A lot of people say, but there's just dead rubbers halfway through. But no, that allows you an opportunity to give young Scottish players a game of football. Dunfermline have got some right good youngsters coming through at the moment. And if they're playing in the Premier League, again, say they're mid-table with 3 or 4 games to go, you're giving some of these guys opportunities to play against a Rangers or a Celtic or a Hearts or a Hibs or something. Surely that's got to benefit Scottish football in general, never mind just Dunfermline or Ayr United in my past. I don't know. Anyway, shooting off on a tangent, the standard in League One football back then, it was all right. It was all right.
Yeah. Cool. The end of that first season, 2005.
It was nuts, mate. Listen, so one story building up to that. We were comfortably in the playoff positions. Okay, top 2 go up automatically, then 3, 4, 5, 6 playoff positions. Comfortably in the playoff positions with about 10 games to go. There was no way we could fall out, and we hit this shocking run of form. So, last league game of the season, we've basically got to go to Hull, who got promoted automatically the week before, and we need to win to guarantee it. If we draw or lose, there's teams below us that could jump above it. We could lose out in the playoffs. So we're going up there. They're in proper party. They're buzzing and everything like that. But anyway, the Friday before the game, Paul Sturrock says after training, right, lads, in the meeting room, have a chat, everything like that. So we walk into the meeting room, we're thinking he's going to go over set plays, tactics, whatever. It's just a little bit of team meeting before we get on the bus and travel up to Hull. Instead, he walks in with a case of red wine, a case of white wine, bottles of Blue Wicked, and bottles of, I don't know, some cider or something like that. Bonks them down on the table and says, right, let's have a drink. We're like, winding us up, yeah, type of thing. He says, listen, I know a lot of you are driving. 1, that's it. Just have it and let's have a chat. No tactics, nothing. Just had a drink. He just wanted to calm people down. Just wanted to... Now, hindsight's a great thing, and when you win, everything's right. You can do anything. You can train 1 day a week. If you're winning a Saturday, you could train 1 day a week and nobody cares, type of thing. We sat down and we had a glass of wine and we're just sitting there having a bit of chat and had a wee quiz type thing going on, that type of thing. And it sort of relaxed the boys a wee bit. We went up there, we won the game 2-1, we got in the playoffs, won the double header against Brentford in the playoff semi-finals, and then go to Cardiff against Hartlepool. Hartlepool had stuffed us 3-0 about 4 weeks earlier and up at their place. So we were by far favourites. We had 3/4 of the stadium. There was about 45,000 our fans there. There was about 15 to 18,000 of them. It was weird. It was just unbelievable. Walking out, my first memory of football or World Cups was Argentina 78. Mario Kempes and Argentina walking out against Holland in that final, and the ticker tape and everything all the way around the stadium. That's what it felt like. Blue and white stripes walking out and just blue and white everywhere around it. It was, again, it's surreal to say it, but it just gave me that sort of goosebump feel about it, and walking out at the front with the armband on, with a little mascot, and it's just that, it was weird. And that night, 120 minutes, summed Sheffield Wednesday up, swear to God. In one game, it sums up a full season of being a Sheffield Wednesday supporter. Because we should have been 3 up at half-time. John Paul McGovern, ex-Celtic, gets the initial goal. We're 1-0 up. We're cruising. They've not been in the game. They make 2 substitutions. They go 2-1 up in the space of 5 minutes of making 2 subs. 8 minutes to go. We're dead and buried. And then we get a goal. We get a penalty. Stevie McLean, he's been injured for 3 months. He's on 19 goals. He needs 1 more goal to get his goal bonus for 20 goals. Comes off the bench. His first kick of the ball is basically a penalty kick in the playoff final. Hits the worst kick you've ever seen in your life. Squirms its way into the back of the net. Their man, because it was a penalty, their man that gave the penalty got sent off. So we go from basically down and out with 6 minutes to go. A boy that's not kicked a ball for 3 months comes on, hits a shocking penalty at the back of the net. We're 2-2, and after that, it was just they had gone. They had lost it all completely. Psychologically, physically, they'd gone. And the extra time, we go 3-2 up, and then a young kid has come through the system all the way through. Last kick of the ball, we just hoof the ball clear. It bounces. Their defender takes a time to go and head it. The kid nicks it and is running through 1v1 against the goalie. Rounds the goalie, rolls it in the back. That's it. Game over. It's just standing behind it. Hartlepool fans were behind me at the time, and the kid goes for the ball and it bounces, and I can peripheral vision, so it's all Wednesday fans all the way around the stadium there, and you can just see it almost goes into slow motion, mate. The crowd's just starting to up off their seat as the boy gets closer and closer to goal, and everything. It's something that'll stick with me forever. Just that slow motion, the blue and white fans getting off. It's amazing, and just the relief that there's no way back for them now. We've won it. We're up. We're promoted. I'm going to lift this cup in a second, and mental. I was out of contract as well, so it was a 1-year contract this time. So yeah, mental.
What an experience, eh?
It was utterly.
And you were captain. What was it like to be made captain?
Yeah, so as I say, Chris Marsden was the captain at the beginning of the season. He had been brought in for his experience and everything, but he took a really, really bad hamstring tear 10 games into the season. Sturrock was the manager, and he pulled me in, and I don't know what he saw in me for manager. Again, I was 33. I don't know what he saw in me as captain material, but he says, listen, I'm going to give you the armband. And I was freaked because I was never ever captain. Even on one occasion at Dunfermline, there was too many lads ahead of me, and that he saw something, and I became the captain at that point. And luckily enough, was able to keep a hold of that armband, do well enough to stay in the team and lead the team. That just mental. It's just things that dreams are made of when you've been released by Livingston, you've been released by Stennismuir, you've been released from an S form at Dunfermline, and you end up being captain of Sheffield Wednesday with 70,000 people in a stadium, not all your own fans, but and lifting a trophy. Albeit it's league, it's the third division in England, really. But it's for somebody like me, it's just it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Amazing, mate, amazing. I was looking when you joined Sheffield Wednesday, during your time, you played in all 11 positions, including goalkeeper.
One season, yeah.
So
Still on YouTube.
What was the story there?
So I think it was the following season after promotion. We were battling relegation all season. We were near the bottom of the league. It was about survival. And we had a 6-point game with about 3 games to go down at Millwall. Us and Millwall were, fighting each other to avoid the relegation spot. So Paul Sturrock, in his madness, decides to put an extra striker on the bench rather than a sub goalie, just in case, because we had to win the game. Draw wasn't really going to be good enough. And 20 minutes into the game, David Lucas goes up for a innocuous cross, takes it, no problem, comes down, nobody near him, lands awkwardly on his ankle and does his, I think it's his knee or something like that, goes down, and we're like, what are we going to do here? So I took the gloves. So listen, away at Millwall's probably not the best place in the world to end up going in goals when you're not a goalkeeper. And the only positive was that we had played 20 minutes, so only had 25 more minutes to half time with the Millwall fans behind me. The second half, I'd have my own fans behind me. But for that 25 minutes, I've learned some new words for Scottish man in that type of environment. I tell you what, it was unbelievable. But anyway, the best bit about it, and it's still on YouTube, 0-0, they get a corner. Second half, about 15 minutes into the second half, they get a corner. So rightly so, they pile everybody around me, around the goalkeeper, and get an in-swinger to whip it right under the crossbar. So the ball gets whipped in. So I'm going up for this ball with bodies, and I'm basically like this, trying to punch this ball with my eyes closed type of thing. I get smashed into the back of the net, ball's in the back of the net. 8 of them are running off to the corner, 1-0 up, celebrating with the fans in the corner, everything like that. We're going nuts. Ref, it's got to be a foul on the goalkeeper, blah, blah, blah. Ref gives a foul on me. So I put the ball down, played it wide. They've still got 8 boys celebrating over in the far corner. And they're looking round, and the fans are going, they're looking round. And we're on the halfway line before these guys are realising that we're on the attack. The referee. So they're trying to sprint back to get back and cover it. We go on the attack, and we actually score from that counter-attack. And the place just goes nuts. And as I say, Millwall's not the nicest of the places to go, or not the easiest to go. But the bravest man in English football that day was that referee. And we end up winning the game 1-0. So I kept a clean sheet. We won the game 1-0. That season, as I say, I played every single position. I got some award, something at the PFA Awards for playing that. But yeah, every single position that year. And that's the most bizarre one, that one. It was just great memories. Clean sheet at Millwall, happy days. I'm happy with that.
Superb. What was your favourite position to play?
Probably centre-back in the end. As I say, I signed for Dunfermline as a striker. Slowly but surely moved backwards. We signed better players for that position in Crawford and Brewster. Dropped back into sort of right midfield because I could always run. Dropped back to right back, and then I was signed by Wednesday as a right back. one point we lost a centre back, so I probably preferred it as centre back. I've got to be honest with you. Played a couple of times with Dunfermline at centre back. I just felt as I got older, I probably need that extra little bit of cover either side of me than a full back in the 1v1 scenarios. Yeah, I probably would say the centre back in the end.
Brilliant, mate. So you spent 4 years at Hillsborough, and then you come back up the road. We spelt at Falkirk, but you started coaching at Falkirk as well. So did you always want to move into coaching and management?
Yeah, I did my B licence when I was at Dunfermline the first time, 20-odd-year-old. I did my B licence back then. Then obviously did a bit of travelling, obviously down to England and things like that. I fancied it. I did a university degree in sports media and broadcasting as well. So I had that in the back of it. I wanted to stay involved in the game in some capacity. My first choice would have been coaching. My second choice would have been maybe some radio work or TV stuff if it came up, if any media work came up. So, I did my B licence very, very young. Did my A licence when I came back from my travels, and then did my pro licence when I was at Falkirk. And so what happened at Falkirk? It was Yogi that signed me. So I brought myself, Neil McCann, Jackie McNamara, Burton O'Brien, people like that. And at the end of that year, Yogi moved to Hibs and Eddie May took over. Eddie May wanted to go younger, which I appreciate now. At the time, you're sort of, feel your nose is about to join, I can still do. But I get it. He says, but you've still got a year's playing contract, so you'll still be registered as a player, but probably won't play. I'd like you to get involved with the academy. I think you've got a lot to offer there. Work with a lad, McBride, that took the youth team. So I did that on a day-to-day basis. But ultimately, Falkirk got really bad injury, so I got called back in to play. And I remember playing up front against Hamilton, and I scored an absolute worldie against Hamilton. Beat the offside trap, ran through and rifled this one in for about 25 yards. So I played 3 more games because they had injuries and things like that. And that was it. After that, it was done. So basically, Eddie May finished my career. I've not officially hung up my boots ever. I've never said that I've officially retired, but that's what happened. So I got involved in the coaching side of things there. Eddie was brilliant. He's done a great job at Hibs and he's in the youth academy there. But Eddie moved on, and then Stephen Presley took over. He included me up there as his assistant, and brilliant time coaching at Falkirk. We got relegated, don't get me wrong, in the first season. We were tailed off, I think, 9 points away, and we took it to the last game of the season. We needed to beat Kilmarnock. They needed a point. We drew 1-1. Drew 0-0, and we got relegated that year. So it was a great learning curve for me as well, coaching side, for the business side of it, because we went from a budget up here to suddenly whoosh right down. And we had to go with young kids. But basically, the squad was average age about 17, 18-year-old. But it was brilliant understanding the finances and how we had to stay a full-time club, and the way fan bases can really have a go at you. We're going to Cowdenbeath with Falkirk full-time, and Cowdenbeath have got old, good, experienced pros, part-timers. They earn a good wage at their work, good couple of hundred, 200 or 300 quid at Cowdenbeath playing. And we are having a tough time with 15, 16-year-olds full-time, but our fan base are like, how can a full-time team get beat by a part-time? Oh, it's just trying to educate sometimes the support base in relation to things like that. That's why people are sort of having a go, how come you can't beat Arbroath and things like that? Like last season, I know Arbroath had a tough season this year, but Arbroath have got good, solid senior pros that have been there, seen it and done it, earning a good wage at their daytime job and a decent couple of quid at Arbroath, so they can give anybody a decent game. And that's why so many clubs couldn't figure out how are Arbroath part-time and they're pushing Kilmarnock for promotion to the Premier League. Blah, blah, blah. It's bizarre. And we're full-time because we're paying young kids 200 or 300 quid a week to stay full-time and try and develop and things like that. So it's a strange time, but I love my time at Falkirk. It was really great. Got some real highs, and we beat Rangers in the quarter-final of the League Cup. One before the quarter-final. We beat Dundee United in the quarter-final and lost in the semis type of thing. So the little memories like that were great. I enjoyed working with, I know Stephen Presley is Marmite to a lot of people, but he was absolutely brilliant for me. He's really good coach, really good manager, understands it, good man management. Really good football person. So I enjoyed that. Enjoyed the time at Falkirk.
Brilliant. Was there any banter during your time there? Obviously, being an ex-Dunfermline boy.
I used to get social media was on the radar now, wasn't it? So when I was at Dunfermline, when I was at Falkirk, so I still have such a good rapport with the Dunfermline fans, but obviously I got it was very tongue-in-cheek, don't get me wrong. There was no real personal abuse, but there was the odd tongue-in-cheek, Judas, you can't step over the dark side, and how can you do that? All that type of thing as a player and then as a coach. But it was good manner, to be fair. I can understand why some players maybe in the past, maybe if they've crossed that divide, have taken the dog's abuse. But I don't know. I had a decent reputation before I left Dunfermline. I thought I was really respectful towards the clubs. I've never been disrespectful towards either club at all. Even when I went back with Ayr and Falkirk beat us twice in cups. You hear the odd shout for the crowd. Even when I was manager of Ayr at East End Park, the odd shout type of thing when we're sort of in front and we're maybe time wasting a wee bit of throw-ins and that. The odd shout comes down, Bullen. Move it a little bit, well, the fans at East End. So, but it was never vitriolic in any way whatsoever. So, yes, there was a good mild manner banter via
good stuff,
or whatever it is nowadays.
What was the biggest thing you learned in your early coaching days to maybe what you're like now as a coach?
I think so. Initially, I was working with a youth team, and that's the difference. And I think having individual discussions with players, not just on football, is really, really good. Whether it's for 1 minute before a training session or 5 minutes or for half an hour after a game, I think building that rapport and building that understanding of the person, not the player, just the person, puts you in good stead, because ultimately you will have tough decisions to make and you will release players and you will make decisions at end of contracts. You will have to do that, and you hope that because you've built a relationship, a respectful relationship, a truthful relationship and honest relationship with players, that when it comes to those tough decisions, they're not happy. I understand that, but you hope when they go away from it, they'll still have that little bit of respect for you and what you do. So I made that a real, especially working with the younger players and helping them at Falkirk initially, and then stepping into that with the first team at Falkirk, where you're promoting some of these younger players due to the financial restraints we were working under. You build relationships there, and being that number two initially, being that link between the manager and the squad, was also a massive learning curve for me as well, for when I eventually became the manager, because I know when you're the main man, you can't have the same relationship as you do with as an assistant or a first team coach. You do have to build certain barriers, but you can still have the personal relations. You can still have these personal discussions. You can still have that respect and that honesty with players, because ultimately they're not players, they're humans, and that's where I think that's sometimes lost on certain managers along the way that I've worked with in the past.
Yeah, it's even more important now with mental health and stuff as well, isn't it?
Big time. As I said, I touched on social media. It's the biggest danger to any young footballer or any older footballer or any young coach or any old coach nowadays. It's madness that the things that can be put out there with absolutely no knowledge of something. People can hammer you for your team selections, but they've not seen anything that's going on during the week. They can hammer you for just absolutely nothing. The fact that, again, I don't know, as an example, I'm sure James maybe gets stick because he used to be an ex-Dundee player or manager. He'll just get... It's irrelevant. He's a Dunfermline manager now. Why? People for Dundee United are probably giving him stick maybe about his Dundee days when he's now Dunfermline manager. I don't know. I'm just trying to throw things out there. It's just...
Yeah.
Some that can get thrown out. It's just... It becomes so irrelevant to anything that's going on. So anyway, that's, again...
Dangerous the way.
Hey, mate, a few soapboxes.
But I'm right in saying you left Falkirk and you go back down to Sheffield Wednesday. You take an under-23 coaching job.
Yep.
So I take that was an easy decision to go back down there.
It was. So at Falkirk, my salary... So as I said, when I started the coaching side of things, I still had a playing salary, so I was still on a decent wage at that time. But obviously at the end of that year, that dropped considerably. We were now in the Championship. I was now an assistant coach. So my salary dropped to £18,000 a year. I'll be honest with you up front, as assistant coach at Falkirk at the time. And there's only so long you can live on any sort of savings you've got. And for me to get the opportunity to go, again, I love my time working with Stephen, working with the young boys at Falkirk. We were doing really, really well in relative terms. But financially, just couldn't afford to live and couldn't afford to do it. So the opportunity to go back down, don't get me wrong, we initially came back down. So my girlfriend at the time, her mum and dad owned an estate agents. We bought that off them and took over the business. So when I went back to Sheffield Wednesday, it was on a part-time basis. Not too dissimilar salary that I was earning at full-time at Falkirk on a part-time basis down there. But I was also working full-time in the estate agents with my girlfriend at the time. But then slowly but surely after it was about 6 months, a full-time opportunity came up in the academy. And I jumped on that bandwagon and got back involved. And then after a couple of years, our first team manager got the sack and his assistant took over and he took me up to the first team. It's just been in the right place at the right time sometimes to get those opportunities. So when I stepped up to the first team, I was there for about 8 years and worked under 4 or 5 different managers. Brilliant experience. Portuguese, English, Dutch, Scottish maybe? No, English again, that type of thing. So really, really good experience, different cultures, different ideas, different ways of doing things. So a great learning curve again for me.
Brilliant. And 3 spells as caretaker manager as well in between those managers. So what was that like, actually managing Sheffield Wednesday?
So the first 2 times I knew there was a new manager in place to come in. So it wasn't one that I was going into it thinking, I might have a chance here. So the first time I took over, we were in a bad place. We had gone through a rough run of form, but that was down to injuries. 14 first-team players injured at the time. So Carlos Carvalhal, who was one of the best coaches I've ever worked with, he lost his job, and that was basically down to the injuries we had at the time. So I've taken over my poor run of form with 14 injuries for 4 games and went down to Knox Forest. We won the game 3-0, and I thought, Jesus, this is easy, this game. We're flying here. And then I'm having to patch up and put the same boys out. So Glenn Leuven's ex-Celtic, he's played ill in the first game, but Euphoria's got him through that. 3 days later, like in England, it's Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday. It's mental.
It's travelling as well, isn't there?
Travelling, exactly. So we're away at Forest, and 3 days later, we're away to Brentford in London. And I've had to ask Glenn to go out again, and he's dying. And we lose the game 2-0. We're 1-0 down, 15 minutes to go. I decide to throw the kitchen sink and go to a 3-5-2 to try and get extra bodies up front, things like that. We score a goal we lose a goal within 30 seconds of making the change. So, and then at home we've got Burton, who are near the bottom of the league, and we lose the game 3-0. That's the worst day I've had as a coach on that one. It's just, we're just swimming against the tide trying to patch up a team. We've got an 18-year-old goalkeeper in goals. We've got young kids out there. Older experienced boys are all up in the stand. It's really, really tough. So 4 games, yeah, really tough. Knew I wasn't getting the job, but I knew I wasn't ready for it at that time. Jos Lukai comes in from Germany. Dutch coach comes in from Germany. Lasts about a year, loses his job, take over again. Poor run of form, and actually win 2 and draw 2. I do really, really well. And for whatever reason, Jos has moved some of the old guard out. Is not playing them or anything. I brought them back in. We won against Preston. We went away to Middlesbrough. Won against Middlesbrough. We went away to West Brom. They scored in the 94th minute to get a 2-2 draw. And then we draw at home against Birmingham. So 2 wins, 2 draws. Buzzing. Really, really happy with it. Really enjoyed it. But I knew Steve Bruce was coming in. So passed the baton over again to Steve Bruce. And it was, you know what? He lasted that half season. That took us up to the end of the season. So that was in January. He lasted half the season and then got the opportunity to go to Newcastle. Now, that's his boyhood club. And a lot of people really had a go at him for that. And to be honest with you, it left us dry a wee bit. But in hindsight, I can half understand. He's probably never going to get that opportunity ever again to go to his boyhood club, Premier League club, massive, massive football club. But from a selfish and personal point of view, I would love to have had the opportunity to work with him a little bit longer. Stevie Agnew and Stephen Clements, his assistants, brilliant. All 3 of them were fantastic, and I would love to have worked with them for a couple of years to learn a little bit more and see what they were like. But they moved on in the pre-season, and we were sort of rabbit in headlights. Myself and Nicky Weaver were left, and we're in Portugal on a pre-season trip. We had to come back for a couple of weeks, for a week, a couple of games, and then we had a pre-season trip to Germany, so I had to take that on. Still nothing. And I think because it was done so quickly, the chairman never had an opportunity to have anybody in place to bring in. So he allowed me to start the season. We lost 1 game in pre-season when I played all the younger kids in a game. So we won about 7 games in pre-season. We go in the first game of the season. We win that away at Reading. We win our next game. So we're top of the league. We lose a game. Then we win another game. So we're back top of the league. And then there's 3 games before the first international break. And I thought, right, that's when he's going to make his decision. He's going to have, surely he's got irons in the fire. He's going to make a decision. But we win another game, and I think I'd won 4 out of 6 games. We've got QPR at home before the international break, and I think, if we win this game, I've won 5 out of 7 games. He's got to give me the job. I felt ready for it at that time. We actually lose the game in the last minute against QPR late on, which is unfortunate, but I've still won 4 out of 7. I think we're lying in 5th place, well in the playoff positions. We've had a decent start to the season. I thought, I've still got a good shot at this. There's been no mention or no whispers of any new coach. And the chairman sits me down, and just at the end of the QPR game, he says, who do you think I should give the job to? And the club secretary sitting next to me, and she's sort of looking at me down. I says, give it to me. He says, He sort of looks at Lindsay's the club secretary. He says I should give him the job. I says, Lindsay's sort of saying nothing, not getting involved in it. He says, I think I'm ready for it. I think I can do the job. He says, but if I give you the job, then you know I'm going to have to sack you at some point. I says, I understand that. I put my head above the parapet. I understand that everybody will move on from a job at some point. He says, but I just feel I'm ready for it. He says, he decided to go with Gary Monk, which was a shame. And it was that point that I thought, you know what, if I want to be a manager, I want to put my head above the parapet, I'm going to have to leave. I could have taken the easy option. I probably would have had a job for life working in the academy at Wednesday. But I just felt I needed to take that chance. And I think for your first job as a manager, you've got to have one of two things. You've got to have an opportunity of success, say Dundee United in League One, in the Championship in Scotland, or a Kilmarnock in the Championship. Or you need a club that's basically needs a bit of a rebuild. And that's what Ayr United was for me. It was a brilliant, brilliant time stepping away from... When I made the decision to step away from Sheffield Wednesday, was a tough decision again. But I love my time at Ayr United. It was I got to build as I say, my own sort of staffing group there, the own squad. We got a new video analyst, which we'd never had. We got a fitness coach, which we'd never had. Basically, when I walked in the door, it was a first team coach and a physio. The academy manager was helping out. We had a part-time coach who'd come in now and again. A goalkeeping coach in Derek Stilley, who was part-time, come in like Thursday, Friday a week. So we got a full-time goalie coach. So it was building that whole thing, and I think we did a brilliant job in rebuilding the club. Possibly the worst thing I did was finish second in the league because expectation levels go through the roof. And then the following season, we lose two of our best players to injury first game of the season, and we lost our top goal scorer to York for a really good sales fee, which the club had never taken in over 10, 15 years. And with that, again, you get that little bit of up and down while you're trying to bed in a new squad of players. And I paid for with my job with that, and that's unfortunately is modern day football.
Yeah. What was the ambition at Ayr, Lee? When you first went in, did that change to obviously then before you left?
No, when I went in, it was about solidifying it and becoming a regular Championship squad, because when I went in, 11 out of the last 18 years had been spent in the league below. So Ayr United were more predominantly a League One side as opposed to a Championship side. So the target was to build Ayr United to become a solid Championship outfit. So, as I say, punching way above our weight and finishing second with probably a budget of, well, lower half, but above relegation sort of budgets. We'd probably have 6th or 7th, maybe 8th budget in the league or something like that in relation to the other clubs that were in the league at the time. So we punched above our weight, and it was great. But that was no issues to me because I quite liked that challenge. I thought it was great. I thought we worked with, had a brilliant recruitment analyst. Graham Matthew was fantastic for me. The chairman was really, really supportive. So that had no qualms for me. And when I did lose my job, I mean, we were second bottom in the league, and I do get that, but we were 6 points off the playoffs. That's how mad the league was at the time. And our next game, and there's no disrespect, my next game was at home to Arbroath. So... the next game was actually Kelty in the Cup, so an opportunity in the Cup, and then at home at Arbroath in the league. So, I'm going to be disappointed. Of course I'm disappointed, but I've no regrets. It was a great opportunity. It was a brilliant league to work in. Would like to have worked in a 16 to 18 team league, don't get me wrong, because then you get more opportunity to really develop some young kids and give more opportunities to youngsters. But it was a brilliant league to work in. Coming back to East End Park was great. Going to Tannadice, going to Killie, winning at Killie for Ayr United for the first time in years was a massive highlight for me. As I say, finishing second was a massive highlight. Taking the club to quarter-final of the Scottish Cup was a massive highlight financially. Selling a player for well into 6 figures was a great boost for me. So I genuinely believe, and I'm not trying to sell myself for that, I genuinely believe I did a good job there, and that's where it was disappointing to leave, but that's where that's football's like. That's where you know what, I'm going to give a big up to your ownership group at Dunfermline, because James went through a tough time this season, and the easy thing is to pull the plug, but good management, a good ownership, they stuck with him, and I think he's put on a great run of form at the end of the season, and we're comfortably in there, and a little bit more luck could have got into the playoffs. So the foundations are there. And I talked about our time with Jimmy and getting promotion and getting stability and then pushing on and trying to. So I think, credit where credit's due. The club stuck with James, and you got your just desserts, and because he's a good coach, really good 100%. Coach.
What would you say is your coaching/management style? What's your biggest strengths, would you say?
I think your biggest strength can sometimes be your biggest weakness as well. So I think I can be too honest sometimes, but that's what I liked as a player. I'd rather a manager told me it straight than not. You're not happy when you're told it straight, but as I say, when you get the opportunity to sit down and think about it, you appreciate it more than in football. I've seen it in the past where some people will say, whether it's players, whether it's coaches, whether it's managers, whatever, whether it's owners, whatever, they'll say one thing to your face, and as soon as you go out the door, you know there's something else being said. So I like to give the players a voice. I am strong. I will make the final decision on things, but I like to ask players advice on what, or opinions on what they think in certain circumstances, whether it's down to a formation, whether it's down to a set play, whether it's down to a specific time of training, whether it's training Monday, Tuesday off, Wednesday and Thursday, Friday, or whether they prefer to be work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, be on for. I like to give players a little bit. I think you get a bit back when you give a bit. So that's things I've learned from coaches in the past, what I wouldn't do rather than what I would do. So again, you try and get a buy-in from the group. You try and be part of that group, but there's also lines that you have to keep as a manager. And you have to. The worst thing I felt, that I've worked under coaches abroad and things like that, where anything ever's going wrong, it's just a screaming match and a bell on. I think if you're a screamer every week, you lose the effect than opposed to a coach who will do it sporadically. And I think you get more effect when a manager has to lose the plot at times. He has to give it home truths at half-time speech and things like that. But if you do that every time that there's been an off day, there is days where the players need lifted, but there is players they need up. That's another part of it that I feel that I'm quite good at getting that balance right in relation to when to dig the team out or dig an individual out. I won't necessarily dig individuals out. I'll quite often, and I'll pull the senior player group. We created a senior player group. Quite often, 3-4 lads, senior players that have been there, and I'll use them as message bearers to the younger group. So if my skipper, Sean McGinty at Ayr United, he's not necessarily had a bad game, but I feel I need to get a message across to the rest of the players, and I'll come in and have a right go through as Sean. I'll have pulled him at the beginning saying there will be occasions I'll go through you and you deserve it. There will be occasions I'll go through you and you won't deserve it, but it's just a layer. And I think sometimes if young kids are in the change room thinking, Jesus, Gaffer's going through this big skipper now, he's going to say to me type of thing. It's more about sending a message to the group. So there's just wee psychological things that you'll use now and again to try and get points across to the overall group. And I think that's important. I like to think I got the balance of that right, or do get the balance of that right.
It sounds like you've got good man management and good communication. That's two of the key things here, eh? That's
what I like to think I do. Now, certain players may say different. I don't know, but I like to think I do. I don't think I've really, even any players I've let go or moved on at end of contracts. I think I still stay in touch with a lot of these lads that I've signed and spoke to in the past. I still drop texts to, and they still text me. So I think that's a sign that I've done all right from that aspect. You're not going to please everybody. You can. But ultimately, as a manager, you can only control the controllables that are in front of you. I can't control how much budget my owner's going to give me. I can't control if a referee is going to give a dodgy penalty against me. I can't control if my centre-forward is going to go down with a hamstring injury while chasing the ball. You can only control with the controllables. And I think if that's the one thing that I think sometimes supporters don't realise, that you can't control everything at the football club. There are sometimes things that are out with a manager's scope. Yeah. But ultimately, you're the head honcho. You're the one that takes the flak for it all the time. So, yeah. No, I think
the joys of management, mate.
100%.
What advice would you give to aspiring football coaches? If you could give one bit of advice.
Control the controllables. That's the first point, 100%. But I'd say be humble. Don't be scared. No, have a plan. Have a philosophy in the way that you want to do it. Have an idea how you want to play the game, but don't be scared to change, because I'm one of these that ultimately you want to get to a place where you want to put your points across. But when you first join a club, it's more about finding a way to win with the player group you've got in at that place. And slowly but surely, if you earn the time, you've got to earn the time nowadays. You're not given the time, you've got to earn the time. As that comes, then you, with recruitment, with ins and outs, you can slowly build that towards the way you want to play. If I'm a 3-5-2 manager and I suddenly come into a team that consistently played 4-4-2, you're going to be all over the place. The players are going to take so much time to try and understand it. You might get lucky in a couple of games early on, but sometimes you've got to understand with the player group you're coming into, what you've got available to you, what's the balance in the squad, and work it around that initially, and then if you get a transfer window or get 2 or 3 transfer windows to work it your way, then fine, do that. But believe in what you want. And philosophy is not down to somebody who's a 3-5-2 or a 4-4-2. If you're a tick-attacker, want to play football, you play that in a 3-5-2 or a 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3. If you're one that wants to play a little bit more direct, play an opponent's half, get the ball, get the opposition turning facing their own goal, you still do that in a 3-5-2 or a 4-4-2. Stick to your basic principles and your non-negotiables, but adapt to the group of players you've got. If not...
Yeah. Brilliant, mate. Great advice. Just a few questions on rounding us all up. So, over your whole career, any regrets?
Yeah, as we touched on earlier, I regret not getting the opportunity to start in 2 Scottish Cup finals. I really do. I realise how lucky I was to do as well as I did, having considered the knocks I took early on in my career. So I'm appreciative of that, and I'm really proud of what I did in the end. But regret-wise, that wasn't down to me. Again, that was nothing I could control, but I just wish I had the opportunities to start in these cup finals.
Yeah, definitely agree. Best bit of memorabilia you've got?
Oh, I've only kept 2 pieces of memorabilia. I've got 2 signed shirts, squad signed shirts from 2 games. Dunfermline, Scottish Cup final, all the squad. So I've got that in a frame with the medal and my playoff final. That's the only 2 bits I've got. No, I've got a couple of old shirts stuck in a cupboard, but the only 2 that I've really got out on show. That's the 2 main ones. As I say, the Falkirk final, I wasn't stripped, so I never really kept anything from that. But those are the 2 strips I've got. The old, almost pure white Dunfermline with a black pinstripe, signed by my Sheffield Wednesday shirt for the playoff final.
Nice. To be fair, you don't want to display a Falkirk shirt anyway, mate. So, hey, did you have any superstitions when you were a player?
Yeah, obviously it changed when I was captain, but I always liked to be last out in the pitch, the tunnel. That switched. Obviously, I wasn't allowed to do that as captain. So, yeah, I always liked to be last out. So, a lot of lads would put certain boots on the right way or the wrong way, or put the right boot on. Always have to put the right boot on first, or something like that, or wear a special pair of socks underneath their shirt socks, or special boxers, everything like that. But no, I like to be out in the pitch last.
What was the craziest one you witnessed in the dressing room?
So we had a goalkeeper when I was coaching, not playing. When I was goalkeeper, his name's Kieran Westwood. So it's nothing against it. We won't have any issues with it. But he, before every game, 1 minute before we went out, he would deliberately go in the change room and make himself sick, go in the toilet every time. That would do it. So he'd down a Red Bull, a couple of caffeine pills, and going, he's sick in the toilet every single game. It's bizarre for me. You used to hear him, making noises in the change room for every single game. So strange, but that was his.
Crazy. Who's been the biggest influence in your career?
So playing career, God rest his soul, he's no longer with us. It was a Chinese coach I had in Hong Kong. I think he was the first coach that showed. No, that's unfair, because Eric Strickland at Whitburn was brilliant with me. He showed real, after being released by Meadowbank and Stennismuir, Derek Strickland took me into Whitburn and really gave me belief in myself again. But there was a coach called Simon Wong in Hong Kong, that really believed in me and probably let me rebuild my ego and everything that had been bruised in the past in Scotland, and that allowed me to go on and be the player I was in the end and get the opportunity to play against England, to get moved to Greece, everything like that. So somebody you've never heard of, was massive. I worked with him for 3 years in Hong Kong, but he was so helpful. He'd always grab me after training to do individual little bits and pieces, things like that. So that, just knowing somebody as your back or knowing somebody believes in you, I think is really special for any sort of individual player, and that's what he gave me.
Brilliant, mate. Who's your best friend in football?
I've got a few now, so listen, I can't name them all because, that full group at Dunfermline were brilliant, but Craig Brewster, as I say, because we became travelling partners, Stephen Presley, because we were tight and working through jumping through so many hoops at Falkirk from the coaching side. John Paul McGovern that I played with at Sheffield Wednesday. I was David Lucas. I think they were 2 lads that became really, really tight friends with us. We've just played in a Legends game at Hillsborough last week as well. So those 4, David Lucas, John Paul McGovern, Craig Brewster, and Stephen Presley, probably the tightest ones that I've stayed in touch with the most.
Right, mate. And final question, how would you sum up your time spent at Dunfermline Athletic?
Success. Success, mate, because it was, in relative terms, it was a club again that was in League One, so every year was success in relation to what we were trying to achieve. To get promotion, that was the aim, and was success. We would love to have won the league, but the biggest thing we were aiming for was promotion to the Premier League. Survival the following season, top 6 the season after that, and then to qualify for Europe and get to a cup final after that. Success, and that's why I hated leaving, but it made leaving a little bit easier because I knew I'd played a part in a brilliant period of the club's history. It's had some brilliant players, brilliant periods of success under Jim Leishman, under other managers, with brilliant players and your Winkers and obviously Norrie, God rest his soul, and all these sort of guys. To be part of that group of players that took the club back into Europe was brilliant. So I've got nothing but positive memories of my time at East End Park. It was brilliant, whether it was training at Petrevie or training down at Rosyth Recreations or training at Eagle Glen as a kid, or say Old Sandy the Scout, or going back and speaking with Jim Leishman. Wee Mo, the kit man, still there. And listen, absolutely brilliant times and great memories. Shame wee Joe's not there anymore, but again, even the Magaluf trips at the end of the season, mate, honestly, the lads we played with were fantastic. It was a great time, and I just wish the club nothing but success in the future. It's a fantastic club. It's a Premier League club waiting to happen.
Top man, Lee. We won't speak about the trips to Magaluf, but last question. What's next for Lee Bullen? Anything in the pipeline?
Yeah, so I've applied for 5 jobs down here. Now 2 are still open, and so I'm still waiting to hear back. Couple have gone already, so I can name those ones. So there was Gillingham, there was Rotherham, and there was Huddersfield. So they've been replaced. But there's a couple of jobs still open at the moment. I'm hoping over the next 2 or 3 weeks, more and more jobs start to open. When the ripple effect starts to say, like, the Norwich manager's lost his job, maybe a League One manager might get that job, which opens another job. That type of thing might open up. I'm just... since leaving there, I've been on loads of CPD courses at St George's Park back down here in England, and out to so many games at all different levels, whether it be non-league, League 2, League 1, Championship games. Back up to Scotland to watch a couple of games, the kind of invitation that you guys have given. So staying in touch with everything like that. Been over to America to have a look at that. That's something that I'd consider. Went to see Robbie Nielsen at Tampa Bay Rowdies and an ex-Sheffield Wednesday coach who's at Indy 11 in Indianapolis. So that was an eye-opener. So I'd consider something like that if something came up. But it's just a case of keep your ear to the ground and hopefully getting the opportunity to get in front of somebody to put your points across. You do that, I'd quite fancy my chances. But 9 times out of 10, there's hundreds of people asking for the same job, and the old email comes back as "thank you for your applications, unfortunately, blah blah blah." So yeah, that's a part of it. But something.
Fingers crossed, mate.
Thank you, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for your time today. We wish you all the very best. Hopefully see you back in management soon.
I really appreciate it, mate. Good luck to the Pars next season.
Thank you for listening to this episode with Lee Bullen. We hope you enjoyed listening to Lee's stories, as he was a fantastic guest on this podcast. Before we wrap this up, we would like to put on record our thanks to sponsors Flow Digital Pharmacy, who have agreed to continue their sponsorship of this podcast for the year ahead. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to walking down the Holbeath Road with another former par next month. Remember to subscribe to this podcast, Walking Down the Holbeath Road, on your favourite podcast platform. Producer of this podcast was Jan Markiewicz, and music supplied, as always, by Stuart Dusty Miller.